Okay, welcome to the Engineer Committee meeting. Notice of the August 8th and 9th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners was posted to the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners website on August 2nd, 2018. So we want to do a roll call.
Kathy Ware,
Present.
Robert Campbell,
Here.
Ricky Bursai,
Here.
Stephen King,
Here.
Alton Heathcote.
I'm still here.
Okay, all here. Why don't we jump to application reviews? We've got several of those to review, and we have made some assignments. And if everybody has had a chance to look, has anybody not had a chance to look at the cases assigned to them?
Ricky, I have looked at everything, but my brain can only hold so many details about so many people. So I would greatly appreciate a refresh
Understood.
on all of them, because we have so many this time around.
Sure. Okay, and we've got all of these applications looks like on our iPads. So we can, if we go to the first one and go to Crouch, and Robert is going to lead us through that, and if we'll just do it where when your case comes up, if you want a minute or two to go over it, you can. And if you're ready,
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I think Crouch. The experience for Crouch is something that I probably struggle with a little bit more. She, I think, works at the traffic division within TDOT. And a lot of the work is reviewing plans, looking at the driveway permits. There are other things listed like utility inspections, site distance verifications, which site distance is kind of one of those things. It's a surveying application more than it is there is some analysis that I see in here, but in looking through it, it's basically taking a plan, see if it conforms to a standard, and then approving or not. Again, there's some information about calculated clear zones, and she gives 3 or 4 examples of that. Assess grading and drainage plans, calculated length for guardrail additions and extensions. And what I don't see in here that caused me a little bit of hesitation is I think I didn't see a progressive path of experience. I saw some experience, but I didn't see the experience getting a little bit more in depth and a little bit more progressive. I mean, that's the right word, I think. So that reason I wanted to discuss and just kind of calibrate a little bit and see if I was being a little too harsh or not. So I'll shut up.
Ricky, since you guys have reviewed it and I didn't actually review the application, we're still going with 2 reviews on everything, right? So I went back and looked through her information, and I think it's up for grabs as to whether or not it has been quote unquote progressive, Robert. Just if all you did was look at what she wrote that she was doing, it could give you the impression that it was not gradually more demanding. However, I think that in looking at her job and the fact that she has the references from other PEs and that she is doing work that is the review of plans that are submitted by other PEs, I think that sometimes we do have a tendency to think in terms of more of a traditional path of first the engineer comes in and they do this and then they do that, and it is more cookie cutter for some candidates than it is for others. But my review of what she did, I would be inclined to approve her. That was just what I saw. And I would be curious what Steve thinks.
Well, Robert, I've had a lot of these discussions through the years because the city of Knoxville has several positions that are review in nature, and it's always somewhat of a struggle. But I guess the point of our disagreement sort of goes back to what is engineering. We don't define it, but I think there is a needed role in our profession that is review. So I sort of feel like we create an uneven playing field for those positions or those engineers who get jobs in these review roles, and there's a lot of them in TDOT and TDEC and all the cities and counties. Our elected officials draft these rules and regulations, and somebody's got to make sure that the submissions by consultants meet those. And in Knoxville's case, I think we recently went through a situation where I described what that engineer goes through to check the drawings, and it's not design. So, but there is that exposure to those kind of calculations. In this particular case, I was looking through. This individual is reviewing things according to the standards that we would design by. Just like she mentions AASHTO about sight distance. Robert's correct. A portion of the sight distance review is a surveying problem, but knowing what it needs to be, considering the AASHTO standards with the height of the driver's eye and the object in the road, if you're talking about stopping sight distance, if you're talking about intersection sight distance, it would be the height of the vehicle that you're attempting to see as you pull out on the road, and there's standards for those kind of things. So I tend to have a broader view of what engineering is, and if someone's getting experience, even though it might not be what we have historically preferred to see, which is design experience, if we're ever going to include industry in our world, we have to expand our view of what engineering is. So, like I said, Robert and I've had many discussions here and there about different applicants, but I tend to have a broader view of what engineering is. Is that fair, Robert?
No, I think no.
I mean, fair about our discussions.
No, it's fair about our discussions, and again, I'm not. This is my blind spot because, or if that's what it is, because I want to see them take sight distance, the understanding of the AASHTO book, and actually take that further to where you're developing profiles and you're looking at how the entire system starts to interact with each other. My issue with reviewers have always been you're taking somebody else's information and putting it through, in a lot of cases, a software package or a verbal checklist, or a checklist or something, and you're not putting the pieces and parts. And I agree with you. I just want to see somebody analyzing more and more complicated things, whether it's a design function or whether, I grew up I started out in manufacturing, and there were many times our job was to simply take data, analyze it, and come up with a solution. And that's where I kind of draw my progressive experience. I want to see somebody take data, analyze it, and come up with a solution, not simply report back and say, oh, this doesn't meet the standard. And I think that's where my whole hang up with reviewers is well, you didn't do your whatever's not coming out on item number 3. Here you go, do it all over again. And there's not that take. So again, that's where my big hang up has always been with all these kind of things. And I just didn't see her taking this piece and this piece and coming up with a little bit more of a
Why don't I kind of chime in here as the mechanical guy who's reviewing the the civil experience, but I approve the application because and big picture wise, I feel like Robert does in terms of certainly feeling comfortable and wanting to see somebody do some calculations, do some design and calculations, and because that's kind of the traditional way. But Steve, I've listened to Steve over the years, and he's right. We don't have a rule in our book that says you have to go into design for a design firm first in order to get a PE. So when I was looking at her experience and what I kind of grabbed onto is like that third bullet of assessed grading and drainage plans and the calculations that it looked like she reviewed calculations and coefficients and really assessed how things were sized and used Manning's equation, and really what we're talking about for progressive experience it doesn't have to be design, it's practical application of theory. And I thought I saw enough in there of a practical application of theory to where I thought it looked like good experience to me. I start to feel uncomfortable if I just see that somebody's handling paperwork without even having to apply any engineering principle to it. So I think that if you're using application of theory to review plans, that fits within our progressive experience. So that's why I approve that application.
I would also suggest that it goes a long way for me that she had several PE applicant referral sheets that they felt she was ready, and they said good things about her. There was no question with regard to whether or not she was prepared to move to the next step in her career. So since there was no hesitancy by her supervisors, coworkers, people who are in a position to judge the quality of her work, that kind of, to me, balances out the fact that she wasn't actually doing design.
Well, I appreciated the fact that either she, on her own, or she was well coached, but she knew enough to mention the buzzwords that got my attention, like the AASHTO, like the roadside design guide, and even ProWag. I don't know how much you all are, working for a city. We get sued a lot. Almost every year we've got some kind of ADA lawsuit that we're dealing with, and it's really a big deal. And ProWag's not even been adopted. It's just a standard out there from 2011 that those of us that deal with public right of way, we're supposed to meet. And it can be a difficult thing to make all those grades work out. So
I didn't know what it was.
she certainly mentioned the right buzzwords.
Yeah.
Alton, if you are there, you got any comments? You may not have the case in front of you.
I don't, but I've listened to all of the explanation and discussion, and again, I tend to be somewhat more liberal. She's applying for the right to sit the exam, and she's actually applying the principles and practice of engineering. She has to understand and know how to use the equations, what the elements of the equations are, what all the components are, how they fit, all the criteria. The fact that she's not actually performing the design doesn't mean that she doesn't understand it. And if she's in a review process, she has to understand all of the elements and components of the design. So, based on what I've heard from the description of the services that she provides in the review process, again, just because she's not performing the design doesn't mean she doesn't understand it and couldn't apply it herself. I would tend to be, again, more on the liberal side and recommend her for sitting for the exam.
Robert, hearing all that, we want to take a vote. you got a recommendation or?
No, I mean,
Okay.
my recommendation is probably that I still don't, and I understand all the comments and stuff, but my recommendation is I still don't see the buzzwords. But I'd just like to see some of the principles put together to come up with, instead of discrete things that it seems like I see in this. I'll say one other thing. I think on some level, and I know it's probably necessity, but on some level, we ought to have PEs reviewing PEs work. A lot of our engineers, by not making them do progressively more complicated things at a younger, when they start their career, and I think we do some of them a disservice and cut back on their move up through the ranks. That's an editorial comment only from a whatever.
Good comments, all good comments. Okay, why, if any other, why don't we, if there's a motion that somebody wants to make about application, or we just vote on it? I'm trying to remember what we just vote on it. Okay, so let's just vote on the application.
And if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call vote since Alton is on the phone.
Okay. All right. So why don't we do a roll call vote on that?
Alton Heathcote,
I vote yes.
Yes, what?
Oh,
Yes, allow her to-
I'm sorry, I was just reminding you to do a roll call vote after you had a motion.
But it's a list of all the applications that they're either going to approve in a motion.
they're going to do a motion first.
Need to do a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that she be allowed to sit for the exam.
Second.
Okay, now you can do the roll call.
Alton Heathcote,
Yes.
Ricky Bursey,
Approve.
Robert Campbell,
No.
Stephen King,
Yes.
Kathy Ware.
Approved.
All right, why don't we,
But I do want to say, Ricky, before we close that, I do understand and respect Robert's viewpoint on that, and I'm a lot closer to him than he probably believes I am on that. I love you, Robert.
Alton, you've just made me cry.
well, I do too, and I look for those design elements when I'm looking at the experience. So I think we're all pretty close. We're not gonna agree on every application. So that's just the way it is. Why don't we move to the next application? We'll hold off on that discussion of the email from FAR Technologies. But move to Jamie, Steve.
I don't think she's here, Ricky. Is she coming? Because in the notes it said she was probably going to come. Okay. Can we delay that to the end? Like, come back to her in case she is trying to get here for this meeting and just.
Okay. Move on to Ja, if that's how you pronounce it, Steve.
Wondering how he got. It's like, wow, that's
He's a
really
powerful
cool.
fellow.
I don't know where that came from. My fingers just typed limb.
Philip's got a long reach.
He remains with us.
That's
Yes,
right.
he does.
Okay.
Who Robert wanted to discuss? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, is the issue, Robert, the type of experience or the length of the experience? Or
When I
both?
looked at it, it looked more like the length. It looked like he was about a year short. You've got master's, Steve, and then you've got but the other experience looks like researcher experience, and I'm not sure that I don't know that it all adds up. It's what I've got as a comment.
Hey, Robert, this is Alvin. Was the research under the supervision or direction of a licensed PE?
Well, it looked like a lot of it was done overseas. And I don't think the professor,
He mentions Ed Burdett. Ed Burdett's a
Yeah.
PE. It didn't say that, but
he is, but the 2005 and 2012, 7 years of it was in China. Burdett was here.
2000, November of 12 to January of 17, it lists it under Burdett, but I don't see whether it's full-time a research position or.
And our I think our rules, I think I went and looked this up, but I think our rules say that it's got to be to get experience, it's got to be a faculty position, or I mean, a researcher didn't seem to fit in what our rules are, and I should have made a copy of that, but.
And sometimes these positions aren't full-time.
Right. And so I just had a hard time figuring out how much experience. It seemed to be about a year short to me.
His undergrad is substantially equivalent? I saw that on the note. Does he get the credit for the master's, and does he get the credit for the PhD? Was my question. Does he get 1 year for each?
Just
1 year total. Okay.
Well, I'm sort of where Robert is. I couldn't validate that the experience was full-time or part-time, he's got a lot of years there, and I don't know whether it adds up to 3 years or not.
Hey,
To add up
hey, Ricky. This is
Yeah.
Alf again. I wonder if we could, given not the confusion, but the lack of, I think, substantive or quantitative information, can we send it back and ask him to provide more substantive information specific to what would be in compliance with our requirements?
Could go back with questions to ask. I mean, one of the main questions, I guess, was that a full-time research position, or was that teaching?
And I think Robert's trying to find if that counts. Yeah.
Well, while Robert's looking, maybe a question is that, so between February 2017 and now, his position is as a transportation project specialist working for Mark Woods.
Working for Mark.
So
He's got
I
two.
think that's good.
So
I
that's
think
a,
that's good.
And he's
so that's a
mentioned
year.
Jerry Hatcher's on it.
That's right. Jerry's listed it.
So
and
that's a year and a half.
That's right.
Really, a
Maximum.
year. That's going to be a year
and
and 10. Yeah, so maybe a year and 8 months. And then the master's is a year, so that's 2 years and 8 months. So you're looking for 1 year and 4 months to get you to 4. And he worked for 5 years as a senior research scientist. So if the work qualifies that he did as a scientist, then you're looking for a year and 4 months out of that 5 years, or whatever that is, 4 years, a little over 4 years.
That seems reasonable to me. Yeah.
I think it's very reasonable. I tell you, those guys, they're usually working 60 hours a week. I know they're teaching and grading papers and all that kind of stuff, but they pretty much live at these universities and doing all this research stuff. I can't imagine that he didn't get 1 year and 4 months worth of experience over a 5-year period. That's just hard to believe. And there may be some discussion. I don't know for sure all the stuff that he was doing, but it looks to me like he was doing a lot of pavement research, and the fact that the state hired him later to come work in the state pavement office for Mark and do that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, that means that he was doing things that were relevant.
I found that, Ricky.
Okay.
62-2-403 says teaching is engineering experience. It says engineering teaching with full-time faculty status in a college or university offering an approved engineering curriculum of 4 or more years may be considered at the discretion of the board as engineering experience. And so this obviously was not a faculty position that we could say, oh, well, you met that, that's fine. But I mean, I understand what you're saying too, but it's just very difficult for me to look through
It's
here
hard.
and see, you know, even if you kind of take, okay, 30% or whatever, it's still, and you know, when you end up with everything else, brakes and all kinds of things in there, then it's really hard to see that he's got 4 years of progressive experience. I mean, he's done some important things, there's no question, but
Well, one of the
4
things he
years?
mentions in here is he's conducting lab mix designs and selecting materials and running data analysis. And frankly, that's the kind of stuff we get paid to do. So it is engineering. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that a lot of what he does now, whether or not that was 10% of what he was doing or 50% of what he was doing, but there's things in here that would constitute consulting engineering if he were doing it on the open market.
yeah, and that's not my debate. My debate is, did he do one of those?
I
Yeah.
can't tell how much.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
If we're agreed that the time we're looking for is a year and 4 months.
I'd be in favor of asking him to
We've got two.
give us that.
Right, we've got 2 years and 8 months where he is now. We've got 1 year for the masters, so that's a year and 4 months. If he could provide information about that, his time from 2012 to 2017, some kind of time information that would show it equals a year and 4 months of full-time work is what.
Motion on that?
I think we just need more information.
Yeah,
Then we
okay.
can vote on it.
One.
Hey, Ricky, do we need to make a motion that we send that back or to request additional information substantiating that the additional 1 year and 4 months?
You probably
And
couldn't.
also-
You probably couldn't hear Alton, but I just asked Liz and Roxanne if we needed a motion, and they're shaking their heads that we don't. It's just additional information. So I think we're good.
One other question I would have, and I didn't. I think Robert was headed in this road, but I didn't understand whether the experience that he had was under the supervision of a licensed PE. Did we determine that?
It did say a PE was his supervisor. And when you
And
look,
is he
when
one
you
of the references?
when you look at, okay, let me find
Yeah,
out.
Dr. Burdett is a PE.
Well,
was
then
a
there,
PE.
and then the Boshan Huang. When you look at the expanded experience description, has got PE after his name as
Well,
well.
Dr. Burdett recently passed away, so he would not have been able to be one of his references, Alton, but he was his supervisor during the time frame he was at the University of Tennessee.
Well, the other supervisor, Huang, who is a PE, is a reference. Okay, we ready to move on then to Lee and Kathy? If you're ready, take that. If you need a minute to look at that.
I'm just trying to figure. I don't know how to. I don't know how we get past the fact that we can't verify the reference. I'm looking for some legal help here. So, how do we get past the point that we can't get references?
Why don't you make just a summary of the case, just for
Well,
the record.
yeah, I mean, the way I understand it is that he has a tremendous amount of experience. Mr. Lee has, I think, goes back to 2001, so we're talking 15 plus years experience, and he's been a professor at UT, and he's got a lot of, his description of what he has done is very deep. But I can't follow the whole issue of the Human Resources Development Services Group that they sent for. I don't understand that.
The issue is translation. We can pay to get a translator to review. Checking that it's in English. Okay. So it's verifying that it's from a credible source. Is that the issue?
It's that these are three references that each have a PE as stated on the reference form: past supervisor, coworker. But when Wanda looked for verification that those people are PEs, and the only verification she can find is that they passed a test, but that doesn't necessarily make them the equivalent of. Is that correct?
Right, and Mr. Lee's the one that sent me those forms.
Right.
That's
We
not
don't have them
something I
independently
downloaded.
verified. We
Right.
don't have a way to do
Right.
that. That's why I'm looking for some legal.
I looked to try to find on Korea's website. I
Right.
can't find any way to verify.
I don't know how to proceed
There's
with
no
it.
way he can get references from the United States because he's been in Korea for a while.
I don't even know what my motion is on this.
The job he's currently holding, they would have just checked his degree, not needed anything.
Who are you talking about?
The job that he's currently holding,
He lives in Korea now.
so he's still there.
Oh, yeah, he's
Okay,
over
I thought
there.
he was-
He's currently the department head at what appears to be an automotive manufacturer. And he lists a geotechnical project in which he was investigating the stability of blah, 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 blah. And he's been doing that all year long. So, but that's in Korea. I don't know if he's trying to get back to the U.S., and therefore that's why he wants the license, but we can't verify that 3 of his, quote, PE references are indeed equivalent to PE because he sent the information and there's no independent verification.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, I know this is a reapply, which is this board has already approved him one time to get his license, which he had a license, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
That's
a
what that
reapply.
means?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I thought
So-
it meant we didn't give it to him before, and now he's
we,
applying
we've
again.
given it to him. So I'm not sure. So in my, and again, I looked at this as this board had already approved him. Now, what has he done since then to make us change our mind? And now for a reapply, I don't know that we've got really good rules that say. I reckon you still have to have a current references and current. Everything has to be current. But he's in a different category because he's already held a license here, and it's almost like I don't want to say he's a comedy applicant, but he's sort of like a comedy applicant from another.
So he let his license lapse
Right.
or something. And had
Right,
to-
he let it lapse. And he's done his PDHs and all that.
2017.
DDHs look fine to me. I mean, it was something. So, I mean, and I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree, but it is a little different in that this board has already said we trust you.
Reapply meant he was turned down.
No.
And this was, okay.
We've already said we trust you to be a licensee in the state of Tennessee, and
I think I would approve him.
And I think then you're kind of going against why he was approved in the first place, and we wouldn't have all that information at our fingertips. So I think your reapplies for any profession are a little bit, on what grounds would we deny him?
I don't think but I don't think we have anything specific in our rules one way or the other on a reapply because, and I always retreat back to the wisdom of the past board that approved him to say, unless there was something that came up in the interim, like there was a felony or he got references that said
Right.
he had done something terrible, I kind of just go ahead and sign off and go on because of the wisdom of past board.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve his application.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, you want to do a roll call vote, Wanda?
Elton Heathcote,
Yes.
Ricky Bursey,
Yes.
Robert Campbell,
Yes.
Stephen King,
Yes.
Kathy Ware.
My statement about the wisdom of past boards is notwithstanding the fact that Philip Lim used to be on this board, or my dad. So I had to put both of them in there, and I hope Philip's listening.
Okay, let's move on to Pickering. Kathy, you want to take Pickering?
Oh, Pickering, yeah, hang on. Yeah, I think this was the construction applicant, is that right? Okay, so his applicant is, I believe, I'm generalizing here, but he says that he has 3 years of experience in the field working on construction, and I believe he most recently had a year plus of experience in what generally we would refer to as more of a design house. Is that y'all agree with that? Is that generally what it says? I don't have the detail. I'm looking through his application. I felt like his construction experience, because it was at IC Thomason and I know what they do for a living, and the fact that, again, that I go back to the people that work there who are PEs did recommend him for receiving the credit toward his PE applicant, that went a long way for me. So if you read through his description of all the duties of his job, he was in the field and had the responsibility of documenting that the equipment that was being installed met the design parameters and the life safety codes as they were written. And he worked on 30 healthcare projects, 17 institutional projects, 5 government projects, and a commercial project. Then he goes on to explain his progressive engineering. And again, I think this does definitely fall outside of the standard design progressive experience, but I did a lot of this kind of work early on in my career when I first started out, and I personally think it is fabulous experience for building a foundation in engineering. And the fact that he was doing it under the direction of others who are practicing engineers in the industry, and IC Thomason, which has been around a long, long time and has a great reputation for this work. I mean, I put it all together, and my perspective was, yeah, this is just the natural. This just must be how they do it with regard to developing young engineers. So I felt like he was ready. If he isn't, I would be surprised. I think that he's probably very well prepared coming out of IC Thomason, and I would recommend that we approve him.
Any other comments?
Sounded like awfully lot like a motion.
I ain't got there yet.
Hey, Ricky, this is Alvin again. I agree with Kathy. I do know that is their process. Similar to other engineering firms in town, that's pretty significant and I think related experience. And a lot of their young engineers at IC Thomason and other mechanical and electrical design firms in town do pretty much the same thing. So yeah, I agree with Kathy that it is remarkable experience for them and is applicable in the practice of engineering. And I would also make that similar recommendation.
He does list during that time period when he was doing all the field work and the CA work, he lists Cliff at Cliff Harville at IC Thomason as his immediate supervisor, and Cliff is a PE and gave him a recommendation.
It looks like all the references are PEs, and they all suggested yes or answered yes to recommending the applicant for registration.
Just add one comment, just for the record, is I think that it is very important that as a board, especially given how many applicants are coming across our desks these days, is that we give a very strong look at everybody that comes across with construction administration, construction management, construction engineering, anything like that that's out in the field, because the truth of the matter is that's where a lot of problems happen that affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And so you can design a lot of things in the office, but when things get built in the field, sometimes there's mistakes that are made that cause a lot of health, safety, welfare issues. So I would love to see more practicing engineers, PE licensed individuals in the field doing construction work. And I think that we should be very open to CA as a mechanism for people to get there.
And I'm all willing to do that. It's just, it seems like some of these applications don't tell us what they've done to come up with solutions to problems, and that's my frustration. Is example where he says somewhere on here there was some noise issue. I surveyed each space under the main and developed a noise criteria profile for each room, which I just assumed meant that you went around and took some measurements with the meter and said it's louder here than it is over here, whatever. Again, that's just my. And work with a mechanical equipment manufacturer and mechanical contractor to modify. So, what did you do to work with them? I don't understand. When I read that, what I read is I called up the manufacturer and said, "Here's this profile of this room. Y'all come up with a solution for it and tell me when you got that done." I don't read. Here are the things that I help look at, help analyze, help go through the process of. It's not that I consider contract administration or construction administration to be something that's not worthy of a PE. It's just that when they explain things, they tend to explain things without going into what they did to solve the steps they went to go solve the problem. And that's always, again, been my frustration with more of these
I'll just say I struggle with the same thing in terms of CA task, and some of it may is because I have this thought that once somebody takes PE and gets a PE license, they can just step out and start designing, and there's a need to protect the public, but that may not be a valid reason to reject an application, because any of us can, with a PE, can design things that we don't have, that we have no experience in and shouldn't be stepping into, and so you can't prevent that situation. So I'm open and to the wisdom of the other board members here, and that's why. Are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve Ira Craig Pickering's application to sit for the exam.
Second. Okay, any more discussion? All right, Wanda?
Yes.
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 Move on to Thacker, Robert Thacker.
Yeah, Mr. Thacker is deficient 9 hours of science that he says was obtained. He's a foreign student, was a foreign applicant, and was obtained while he was in high school, biology, chemistry, physics, because that's the way it's done where he's from. I don't doubt that that's the case, but this is kind of one of those that sometimes we run into as well. He's practicing traffic engineering for the last 16 years, and chemistry is not a big deal in traffic engineering, I don't think. Biology is probably not a huge deal, although everything's starting to get related. I shouldn't say that too loud. I'm just struggling getting permits all over the place, and it just drives me nuts when it takes so long to get a permit from somewhere. But anyway, another story for another day. The only one that you probably have in traffic engineering that's applicable from a science standpoint is probably physics. And so what I would like to know before I make any kind of motion, I've kind of written this down. Is it possible for NCAAS to validate that? And I think he's from India, I believe, and I would like, is there some way to validate that their high school criteria, they do get a little bit more robust high school in the sciences. And again, from a physics standpoint, in traffic engineering, and that's what he's done for the last 16 years, so I don't see any reason that he's going to change now. But it's pretty elementary physics is the thing that would be needed. You're not launching objects into space or anything, so I think it's a fairly elementary type of physics. But are they getting calculus-based physics in high school, or are they getting? I don't know. And he makes the statement. The statement sounds right, but my leaning is to go ahead and approve him. But I would like some more understanding of what they do get from a background standpoint.
Just for clarification, from a legal perspective, do we have the right to waive this requirement for this candidate?
I don't know that you're waiving it. We may just not understand fully all the detail of the high school.
Well, I know that Robert is asking, can NCAAS go back and verify from his high school if he has this to help him meet the requirement? But he's deficient right now, 9 hours math and science. My question is, do we have the ability to waive his deficiency by 9 hours? Is that even possible?
If they come back and say, yes, that.
But only if there is a verification.
Right.
So we're not waiving it then.
Yeah,
you can't waive it. Is that what you're saying?
Right. He'd have to have those credits there, but we can ask. I don't know do they go verify high school?
I don't know if they even look at the high school.
I don't think the high school is that first depth analysis that they do. I think it's the education from college.
This is not the first time we've heard that, though, is that in other countries, they basically get a lot of the freshman college stuff out of the way as a senior in high school. And when I look at, just for instance, what my son and daughter are doing, what they're doing as juniors and seniors in high school is probably way above what I did as a freshman in college.
You were doing this, weren't you?
No, I was playing spades and eating a lot of pizza in my freshman and sophomore years in college. So,
hey, Robert, isn't that part of the International Baccalaureate program? You actually can go into, you have the science and the math curriculum. It makes you equivalent to a sophomore in college once you graduate with an ID.
Yeah, it may be, because I just don't know, and we may run into that more and more as we start doing this dual enrollment type thing that gives some credits for what you're doing in high school. I think you still get college credit here in the United States, but they may have something similar to that overseas that, where you really are doing physics in a college physics in a high school setting, and it may just not show. I don't know. I would like to know the answer to that, though.
Seems to me like it might be problematic to get NCAAS to do this. Is it possible that we can get more information from the candidate to submit to Dr. Smith? Is that right? John Smith or Dr. Smith, or for him to do the evaluation? Because I'm not sure NCAAS will actually do that. If they will, that's great.
They're in English. That'll be an issue.
The language would be
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah,
It's-
the
it's
language is
getting
not
the
a
high school.
problem.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably, for the candidate, the easier path to approval is going to be him submitting his own documentation and then having Dr. Smith review it and give his opinion with regard to any deficiencies, as opposed to waiting on NCWS. My fear is that we'll wait on NCWS 6 months and they'll come back and say, no, we can't do that.
I think they would have started at that college level if it's approved in college as
Right.
past the preliminary courses, and that we count them and skip them because he did them in high school. I think they take off.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think too. So, again, just the quickest path for the candidate is probably an alternative to NCWS approval. Whatever it is that he wants to give us, I don't know what that would be, but if he has such a thing, a high school transcript or, is that,
Yeah, it would have to be that high school transcript and breakdown.
Script and maybe
Robert,
the
what do you think about that?
I think
credit
that's a good
sheet
idea.
from
I
the
just-
organization.
Something to let us know. Again, right, wrong, or indifferent, I go back to, is this person going to be a risk to the state of Tennessee to give them a license? And I think the risk is very, very, very minimal,
I
just
totally
because of
agree.
where he's pigeonholed. But we
But
have
once
to-
you give it to him, then
right,
he can
we
do
open
anything
it
he
up,
wants. That's
and
right.
we need to make sure that we've got some basis to, besides just me thinking that, to base that on. So I think that's a good suggestion, to ask Dr. Smith to do an evaluation and get some more information to see if we're in pretty good shape there.
We would tell the applicant that the hours are short are the sciences and what we're looking for, and okay, and I don't, and as far as the legal question, I mean, I feel like you do. I think the chance that this is a risk is minimal based on the experience here, but I'm looking in our laws and rules, and I don't see anything. The only thing I see is either an ABET degree or something that's deemed equivalent to ABET, whether that's by NCEES or by somebody that the board approves to do that evaluation, which in this case is Dr. Smith. I don't see any language in here that says if the board may waive an education requirement if the degree is found not ABET equivalent. I mean, it may be in here.
No, you're
I
reading
just
that
don't-
correctly. There's not a
There's-
waiver for the credit deficiency, but I think your plan to verify with the high school transcript, have Dr. Smith evaluate, and we can get a translator if we need to, and then perhaps he could reach out to the crediting organization for some kind of verification that he got credit for those courses as well. And then at that point, he wouldn't be deficient anymore, and you could approve him.
They may issue something on the college entrance approval sheet or something. We're giving you X minute, just whatever he wants to give us. Tell him not to leave any stone unturned. I don't think we need a motion, though, do we? No.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on that case? Okay. We'll move on. The next case, Zach Wadley, and Mr. Wadley's here in the room. Zach, why don't you step up to the microphone
You
there?
should have told us. We would have gone. We
Would have gone for you first. I'm sorry.
I knew. I'm sorry. It's my mistake. Okay. Zach, welcome to the board meeting. Thanks for coming here. Why don't I do this? I'll kind of lead through some points in the review here, and if I make a mistake, just pipe up and tell me, to correct what I'm saying. I originally reviewed this, and looks like Robert did as well. And what I didn't see that that Zach was working under a PE at his present job, Chickasaw Electric, and that the co-op program that he had at Union didn't really meet the description in the Tennessee rules, which had some language in there about it actually getting university hours, getting some course credit for the co-op. And so after that, Wanda collected more information from Zach, and in working at Chickasaw Electric, Zach actually worked under the supervision of a PE who is with Allen and Hoschel engineering firm. And so, and that PE has written a letter and is one of the references stating that the experience was that he did have review of your work. And the co-op work was needed to be a year, and it was actually a year and a half, I believe, to get us there. And my question at one point was that full-time work? And the answer came back, yes, that you were working full-time at that point. And the problem, I guess the issue is, since that co-op program doesn't exactly meet what's stated in our laws and rules, is that okay with the board, with the engineering committee? And the thing that is, I think, noteworthy is that the transcript, the academic transcript, actually mentions that as co-op work, that is what was happening in that time frame. So it was something that the school, Union University, recognized was going on, and they didn't realize at the time that they had to give academic credit to have it count towards, really to meet the letter of our rules. But based on the letters from Union University about the program and about what Zach did, and also the experience that was obtained, I'm comfortable with approving that experience, as well as the supervision of the Allen and Hoschel PE. And so I recommend for approval, but I'll do that with listening to the other committee members, and whether you've had a chance to look at the case or not.
I've already.
Alton, any comment? I don't know whether you've seen any of this application or not.
Ricky, I apologize. I've lost contact for about a minute there. What was the question again?
We've
Get off Twitter.
My kids would die laughing if they heard you say that. My dad's on Twitter. Oh my God!
you probably have not seen the Wadley application?
I have not.
Okay, well, the issue, probably the main issue, is the co-op program wasn't an official co-op program at Union that was that is being used for experience, and that it didn't count for academic credit, but through some letters from from Union University about the work that Zach did at the co-op, everybody here is comfortable with that meets the spirit of the co-op rule for progressive experience.
Was it a full 1 year co-op?
More than.
It's a year and a half of full-time work at Jackson Energy Authority, correct?
Yes, sir.
Alton, it looks like that Union's pretty new in the engineering education game, and it looks like they just didn't dot their I's and cross their T's, but they fully acknowledge that Mr. Wadley had that co-op experience, and had they known, they would have given him that experience through his transcript. So, I mean, it looks like the university messed up. It wasn't Mr. Wadley's deal to know that, to be able to put that on.
Yeah,
We've got verification that everything was fine from Union and others, so I
Right.
think that's good for me.
Yeah, because
I agree.
we got a letter, we got a JEA letterhead from a PE that verified everything too.
good. That satisfies any condition I would have.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion, since I was the one who, held up the train to approve this application.
Second.
Okay, Wanda, you want to do?
Kathy Ware,
Approved.
Stephen King, Robert Campbell,
Approved.
Ricky Burnside,
Approve.
Alton Hemphill.
Approved.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yes. I apologize
for
for
your
making
gas.
you wait.
No.
My stupidity. However, I will say it's not a bad thing to have you hear these.
Yeah, this was a good experience. Thank you.
The cases discussed, and
One day you can sit in one of these chairs. You should aspire for that.
now it's on you to go do well on that exam.
Yes, it is.
Now, Zach, I'm going to give you an engineering training moment here. And you did perfectly. When you sense that the argument is going your way, you shut up and don't say a thing.
I sense that.
I've seen so many people think that they have to say something when it's going their way, and screw it up so bad that when you sense the thing's going your way, you don't say another word until you think it's moving in that direction. You need to stop the momentum, but you did great on that. You didn't say anything. You let us. So that was good. Good stuff on your part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Ricky, just as a side note, you mentioned that Union has a fairly new program. It might be a good outreach opportunity for the board member to discuss our laws and rules with the head of their program, just so they know what we expect as well.
Okay. Have you seen the letter that the head of their program wrote?
Yes.
Okay. The Dr. Russ.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Letter. I mean, so that would probably be maybe just a discussion while looking at the rules, which I have a feeling that she did in order to write this letter, but yeah, we can. I do that, and do I need to?
Yeah, you need
To
to
get-
pay for
Oh,
the
that was just a side note.
No, I mean, it won't get done unless we assign it to somebody. So I can do that unless.
Yeah,
anybody
maybe
else
just
wants-
as a follow up to make sure they're clear on
I
everything.
don't-
But only
I'm-
if you want to.
I make these phone calls all the time. I can do that. Okay, let's go back to, as far as on our list, the email from FAR Technologies, which has to do with a company who is doing engineering work, who their responsible in charge engineer is a part-time employee, which is not according to our laws and rules. Alton, did you get a chance to look at this?
No, I haven't had access to email since last Friday.
Okay. I did. So I'll kind of say what I found here. It looked pretty clear to me in our rules that a part-time responsible in charge engineer doesn't meet the rules. When you look at our laws, Tennessee Code annotated 62 to 601, and go through that, it says, let me see if I can find it. So it says at least one of the principals or officers of such corporation, partnership, or firm is in responsible charge of such practice and is registered as herein required of architects, engineers, and landscape architects, or is otherwise authorized to practice. So the law says at least one of the principals or officers has to be a registered architect or engineer. And then when you look back in the rules for corporations, partnerships, and firms, in 0120-06.
Responsible charge requirements.
Yes.
0120-06-.04. Only officers and principals who are employed full-time for a minimum of 30 hours per week and who hold active Tennessee registration can be in responsible charge of a firm's practice. A registrant who renders occasional, part-time, or consulting services to or for a firm may not be designated as an officer or principal in responsible charge.
Thanks, Liz. And in terms of this corporation, their firm disclosure, the engineer or registrant in responsible charge is listed, but is not. Is listed, but that person is not listed as one of the officers or principals. And then in a letter, it says the company is a technologies company, and they don't really do very much work that requires certification by a registered professional. It's infrequent, and the only time they need a registered professional, it says, is when one of their telecommunications client may have a small portion of their infrastructure upgrade that requires a certified traffic control plan for work in a right-of-way, and that usually requires one or two 11x17 plan sheets submitted to the other situation is when they have a telecommunications client that elects to use RUS funding for an infrastructure upgrade project. The loan application requires certification. And I just don't see that our rules really allow the part-time, and looking at options that this company may have, one would be to just hire a sub-consultant for the work that requires a stamped, registered engineer, and that would seem to do it. The other is there is something here under disclosure requirements that says an individual registrant practicing in his or her own name as a sole proprietorship shall not be required to submit a disclosure form. Well, I guess I was just thinking this person could become their, separate entity and become a consultant and be a consultant to this company and not be an employee. But I don't.
Why do they need to do the disclosure form to start with? Evidently, they're not an engineering company. The engineering that they're doing seems to be a minor part of their mission.
I guess because they're performing that engineering in-house with an employee.
Yeah, but go sub-consult with that employee if he's a PE or something, or whatever. I think that's.
A road building contractor might hire someone to do a traffic control plan, but they don't do a disclosure as that they're an engineering company.
Yeah, because once you get listed as an engineering company, you're an engineering company. If your firm disclosure is approved that way, you're considered to be an engineering company. And I'm with you, Steve. When I read that whole thing, it's just like, why? That's bizarre.
There's some reason they want to do this, and it's probably not a good reason.
Are they calling themselves an engineering firm? Are they holding out that they offer engineering services in the state of Tennessee?
The disclosure form. Well, the company name is FAR Technologies, and they're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they checked off engineering as the type of professional design service offered to the public in Tennessee. They checked engineering.
So in essence, they are holding themselves out as engineers.
Not yet, because they've not been approved.
Okay, all right.
my guess is A, they didn't understand exactly what we meant when we, said you have to fill out a disclosure form to be an engineering firm, or B, there's a little bit more of a nefarious reason there that they're trying to use the word engineering to make themselves appear a little bit more technical than they are, right? I mean, that's hopefully it was the first and not the latter, but we don't know. Make a motion, no.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just to be clear, the motion was no exception. There is not one in the
They are
rules,
not,
so-
no, no exception to that.
They don't meet our laws and rules, and, Okay. All right, Wanda, you want to do our roll call vote?
Kathy Ware,
What am I saying?
The motion and the second is to deny their request to use a part-time person in the disclosure.
Agree.
Stephen King, Robert Campbell,
Yes.
Rick Burnside,
Yes.
I agree with the motion.
Okay, motion passes, and that is, have we got one more?
The third one on the list.
Oh, we were going back to, yeah, she didn't show up.
Okay, that's Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, can you lead us through that one, Steve?
Well, the significant thing to me there is the email from the NCEES representative. I mean, it talks about how the applicant submitted the $400 fee and then asked for a refund. NCEES rep noted that they get these kind of requests often from this school, but for some reason this applicant doesn't want to make the request. It's a pretty critical email about the applicant, I think.
A request to get her course syllabus, is it?
Yes. She talks about how that if NCEES is asked to evaluate it without the syllabus, that it will be a negative outcome.
Is this the first time this has come before us?
it's come before you before, and it's come before you before, and you asked her to submit proof that she had tried to contact her university, and she did send those emails.
Okay, and is this the case? This is not the case where we were going to get textbooks in lieu of. Okay,
No,
that's
that's
different.
that's a
Okay.
different one.
Okay.
Roxanne, is this the one that I asked you to meet with her and her employer?
But they never
It
responded.
was two that
Yeah.
were pretty similar.
Two were right back to back, but they
Can't
never
remember if it-
responded. They wanted to go ahead and reach out and see what NCEES
Okay.
was going to provide. And that was the last. They were
Oh.
just going to go to them and then check back.
That is this one, though, wasn't it?
They were back to back.
Sure, it was two different ones that were kind of the same,
Okay.
but I'm not sure.
It rings a bell to me. I think it might have been.
Okay.
And they were comfortable with waiting to see what NCEES
Okay.
found.
Right. I remember that. I just can't remember if it was the same case, but
I think it is.
sounds
And-
like the
and
same
it stopped
one.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to help her and trying to move her past this hurdle, but
Tried to get the emails from her university, and they are corresponding with NCES in Farsi. Is that the language?
Everybody's seen the email from NCEES about how they've received information from the school in the past, and their person's opinion with NCEES is that the applicant's basically trying to get around the system, not requesting the syllabus.
Do we think that's true or not true? Do you know, Wanda? You have an opinion?
That the school where she went is not part of the main
Yeah.
campus anymore,
Yeah.
and they don't recognize her as a student, and they don't want to help her, is what she's saying.
You're looking on your iPads under her application on page 17. They seem to at least indicate that they've been able to obtain these things.
Things can change. I mean, to have an open mind about it.
Well, in the name of full disclosure, as I was mentioning to Roxanne, both she and her employer, which is WSP, have reached out to me and said, what can you do to help me, and what can you do to help her, and what do we need to do to move forward? And I put them in touch with Roxana directly and said, this is what you need. This is the path forward you need to take. And I haven't had any off the record conversations with them at all. But they, both she and the fact that she's enlisted her employer to try to help her, to me means that she really is trying to push forward. Now, whether or not she wants to get a waiver, I can't speak to that.
Well, the email from NCEES I just looked at the date. It was in March, and they're still talking in July.
Right.
And she hasn't had any success. So.
And some of her references need to do their spell check. One of them said that she's a contentious engineer, so I assume that meant
That is a very pleasant interpretation. Yes, I like that. I like what you came up with.
conscientious. I'm assuming that's the only word that seems to make sense. But
The question to us is, do we approve evaluation by NCEES without a course-by-course syllabus? And looking at the letter from NCEES, the last paragraph says, by all means, we can and will proceed with the evaluation with only the transcript and diploma provided, in parentheses, without course descriptions. But we do need to be sure your board and the applicant know and accept the evaluation outcome will be negative. I don't quite know what that means. Whether it's negative, just a negative to not have the
Doesn't sound positive.
course-to-course description, or whether she's just saying it's going to be turned down. I mean, it's not going to be deemed equal.
That's the reason we wanted it, I think, in the first place, was their note on the report itself stated that they didn't have all the details they needed.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to need to interrupt and say this is not the same one, because
I don't think it's the same one.
Because I finally found in her email thread at KCI Technologies. So it is two different people.
It's been
I don't think
two,
it's
so
the
she's
same
not
one.
in.
Okay, so I
Good.
retract my former
Good.
statement about that. Sorry. But it sounds very, very
Yeah,
similar.
they do.
I mean, almost
It's
identical.
They do, and they
Similar.
came through right at the same time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't heard on the other one either, so.
So what we're saying is we still don't have enough to give her approval, right? And there's not anything we can really do about that.
And I think NCWS is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Without anything further, you're
Right.
back to where you were.
Yeah.
Before you make, I don't know if you're going to make a motion,
No,
but before, how is this different than the young lady we told to go get textbooks? To
Robert, based on the information, it sounds almost exactly the same as that case, and because I think in her case, the university that she attended was a private university, but it was absorbed by the larger university, therefore no longer exists. But she couldn't get any transcript information from the private university because it no longer exists. But the bigger university didn't keep any of the information from the university it absorbed. I don't know if this is the same or not, but we gave her the opportunity or asked her to bring the textbooks in. Why wouldn't we give this person the same opportunity?
Well, that was kind of my point. Is we've kind of set that as a remedy to that situation of bringing in textbooks or papers or whatever you've got to kind of backfill that course description. And it seems like if we did it for one, that ought to be what our solution is for the other. Because I mean, to me, they seem, I can't make a distinction between the two cases. And so if we did that for one, I'm going to make a motion or not a motion. I'm going to have a request that she bring in additional information such as textbooks, papers, whatever she feels appropriate so that NCWS could take that transcript and compare it to the value. Now, the problem is going to be, it's probably going to be the whole dang textbook's probably going to be in Farsi, right?
We can hire a translator for that if we need to.
For a 400-page
not for the book.
textbook?
Well, for
Not for the book.
if it's help
Just the title.
for yeah, I'm sorry. If it's helping to evaluate whether or not we can
Okay,
approve her,
okay.
then yes, we can hire a translator.
You
for
may
that.
need to hire a translator for me in just a minute because I'm starting to have English as a second language. But
Now, keep in mind, I think the reason we went down the books with that young lady, she actually offered and said, I have my books.
We asked her, though.
And we
No,
did?
We
Okay.
asked her. And
Okay, she said
I
she
think
did.
we-
I remember she said she did.
I think we checked with NCES.
They've done that.
And they said that would be very helpful. So that seemed like a positive step, something we could do.
And I am reiterating a lot about the translator. We just finished our Title VI training again for the year. So I want to make sure that we don't, deny anyone based on their
It's on the record.
race, national origin. So
finish mine too.
we can make sure that a translator is available for the purposes of
But
approving.
you
our
also said that it's not
Parent-
that they're in a 400-page textbook.
got it.
maybe.
We're not going to make them read the whole book.
Okay.
Just enough to
Table of contents.
whether or not, yes, table of contents. I'm glad you did your training as well.
I passed. I don't know if shocked is the right word. I just don't have good memory.
shocked, but the rest of us are
I don't have good memory retention. I can't remember what I read 5 minutes ago. So when they start talking and I start reading, I'm like, God, what did we just say? Is it not real?
A motion. Did you make a motion?
For me to pass my title to?
No. No. To request.
Yes. Well, I don't
textbook.
think we need a motion.
We don't
I think
need a
it's
motion.
just, we've already said, I think she needs to provide more information, and I think the textbooks and other information she can provide along the same lines as what we are getting from the other applicant would be, I mean, that treats everybody the same. That, and I think that from NCWS's perspective, it let them make a determination on the coursework. So to me, that is the only remedy that I can think of to get, log jam.
Does anybody differ from that? Anybody got any more comments? Okay. Why don't we proceed that way? And that is consistent. Okay. I think that's all the applications unless somebody has something else. That's everything on our list. There's nothing else on the agenda, but I know that we've got a NCES annual meeting next week, and that we've got votes to make there for the people who are going. Is there anything? I'm thinking Does anybody need to take a 5-minute break or keep going? Okay. All right, let's keep going. Is there anything else on the agenda other than
That is it. You've got
meeting?
both documents. It'd be the first document, and then the second one is the lengthy one that, Robert, you were able to send me. So hopefully that's, they're both on the iPads for you to review so we can be ready for the meeting.
Which one is it, the first or second one?
The second one is the full document of their meeting and the motions, but the first one is an email from Robert that might be good guidance for us, I think, with all the different points of discussion. And that's the first one we're going to use with the full meeting to kind of add to our October meeting.
That's good. So,
Okay.
So Robert,
It's the
This-
summary of NCAAS annual meeting motions. I think that's all the motions.
Like 65 pages,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, that's all the motions that
Are gonna
they
come
were
up.
presenting at the meeting. But then there's this other zone meeting continuity guidelines that was, I didn't see it in here, but maybe I didn't look at everything.
I see. The first document is just the engineering forum, the issues.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And I think that engineering forum is typically just an open forum, but we don't take any position as a board during that. Not seeing, and the reason that the motions are important, obviously, is we got to hit the button, right? And vote
Right.
one way or the other.
Right. And I think the forum, and yeah, I think definitely the voting is important. The forum can be something that's helpful in that if we're struggling with a topic that's not on that list, we could ask that it be added. But my experience in those forums is that they could spend the whole amount of time of the forum on one of those topics, and they have to move along. I don't know with that number of topics that I'm seeing there that they're even going to get to all of those. So I'm not sure at this point that we would be able to successfully add topics to that forum. But why don't we look at the issues that are going to be motions? And I have not looked at this. This is
I went through some of them.
60-something pages of motions. And if you've got, I don't know if any of the rest of you had time to look at all these motions, but Robert, yeah, if you have some picked off that we need to discuss, let's go through those.
Let's just fly through real quick, and I mean I know it sounds like a lot, but I think we can go through several of them very, very quickly.
Okay.
So if you look at ACCA Motion 1, that's just allowing past presidents to attend, to be a part of the standing committee. I don't see any big deal with that. Number 2 is some sort of or instead of and. 3, I didn't see anything that said this was about model law surveyor, so I'm not sure that we would get real cranked up about that anyway. Motion, unless they make us mad. Motion 4 on ACCA Motion 4. Again, there's just it looks like a word involved in all matters. They took out all involved in matters. Not a big deal. Manual policy and position statements. Changing something about the international affiliate organizations. That's no big deal. Travel expenses. ACCA Motion 6, which I think is good. They're basically paying for the member board administrator since they're getting rid of, is that the right, I think that's the right one, since they've gotten rid of the member board administrators meeting or interim meeting that they have. So they want to make sure they get as many MBAs as possible to the annual meeting, which again, as a delegate, I think that's now the board, it's on the non-consent because it's got a price tag of $114,000. And God knows we've got to argue over $114,000 when we've got $28 to $30 million in the bank. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And the same thing on kind of follow up on motion 7 is I think that's for the surveyors though. One of them was for, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's the same. We'll discuss that because it's got a $78,000 price tag on it.
I agree with you that the MBAs add
I think that's a positive
a
for us.
lot of expertise to these meetings, and it wouldn't be the same meeting without them.
The next one is, again, ACCA Motion 8, where it says that they're saying that at least one member shall be a professional engineer, one member a professional survey, and one member a member board administrator. The board is disagreeing with that because they say that the president needs to have needs to be able to pick who they kind of want to. My only disagreement with that, and we can come back and discuss this later if you want to move through some of these other motions, was that it seems to me the president picks the committees, but there's no opportunity for any of those committees to be ratified by the larger body or board of directors or anything. So, I mean, the president could pick a committee that doesn't represent anything about anything. And that's a bigger issue. That's not necessarily in this motion. I think that's a good motion. I think if you're going to have a committee, you got to have, some diversity of things, of board members on it. But as I kind of went through it, it didn't appear that there was any way. I mean, when the president picks a committee, that's it. There's no, hey, wait a minute, what about this? And maybe that's okay. I don't know. But anyway, we can come back to that one if you want to. That way we can.
But the way it's just hitting me, the way you explain it, I think it kind of sounds like a good change to add that requirement in there because it would be hard for me to believe that somebody couldn't find a qualified person of each discipline.
Right, exactly.
They're just not trying hard enough.
Right.
So I'm kind of thinking that sounds like a good motion.
Yeah, and I think reaching out to some anyway, diversities of discipline seems to make okay. Number 9, and you can probably help me on this one. I'm trying to remember.
Number 9 basically creates a fiefdom for the president. He appoints everybody and anybody, and nobody gets to say anything about it other than him. Yeah. That's what it says.
And again, it's endorses and it's on the consent agenda. Now, keep in mind that I think this language is somewhat similar to what other language is as far as a president or a chairman is typically an ex officio for other committees. They can attend any kind of meeting. They can do other things. And I don't know that I understand well enough the interaction between the board of directors and the president, how much authority they have to override what the president says. But I would tend to agree with you that it doesn't seem like there's a real good check and balance in here.
Well, this one is the one, number 9 basically says, I'll read it. The president shall be the chair of the board of directors, blah, 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 blah. The president shall appoint all members, chairs, vice chairs, and consultants of standing committees. The president shall also appoint all members, chairs, vice chairs, and consultants, special committees, and task force. It goes on. Shall appoint one member of the board of directors serve as board liaison. Shall appoint all official representatives of the council to any other organization. If needed, shall appoint a tellers committee for the election of the president-elect and the treasurer. Basically, and there is nothing in here that says shall be affirmed by the body.
Yeah, and I don't think, but see what it's taken the place of? Said the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I think it's an opportunity to.
Well, and it may be. I mean, I think that, I go back to church. So at church, you have a committee on committees that puts people on committees, but they still come in front of a business meeting so that the body gets to say, we're okay with the people that are on these committees because you may know somebody that's a whatever and shouldn't be on that committee. And I think there's some wisdom in the body being able to see committee members. Question to ask.
I'm new to it, but when I read it, I thought that really has to. I just would say the body needs to at least affirm all those appointments. Just because somebody at the last minute could stand up and say, "Hey, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but that guy that you just appointed as treasurer, he's been indicted on embezzlement charges."
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
So I think there's probably some disagreement that we would have there, and we can discuss that in our zone meeting.
I agree with you. It looks to me like what you're objecting to is in the existing.
Yes.
So if
Right.
this fails, you're still going to have what you're objecting
Right.
to. It looks like they're just adding some detail
Yeah, I just want a
that
friendly amendment.
isn't in the first part. So I don't think whether we approve or disapprove this, it won't change what you're.
But I think we ought to have, it's an opportunity while they're opening up a section to go talk to them about that.
Yeah.
And at least in the zone meeting say, has anybody thought about this? I mean, if we're one of 16 states thinking it's a bad idea, we're going to get outvoted and it's not worth our time. But
We need to find out about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Committee on Awards, whatever. Keep going. I mean, I don't think there's anything in there. This future, position 35.
Here we go again.
Let's skip. We can be in here for 6 months talking about it. The board of directors seems to think everything's cool with that, but then they did change some. They did change some minor parts of the language. One of the things that they have is they've got something that's different than our law. If I remember the right part of it, yeah, I've got it circled where they talk about a master's degree. A master's degree, as long as the other that is okay, as long as they've certified the undergraduate bachelor. So if you get a master's in structural engineering, and the school has a bachelor's in structural engineering, I think I've got the right one. I'm going through my question. Yeah, this one's going to. I don't know why it's on consent agenda, other than it's probably doesn't change a whole lot from what we had in there before, but it's still gargantuan, and we might want to discuss it. Motion number 2, frankly, I think we're moving into some direction that this says where it's 15, 30, and trying to standardize across the different states on your continuing education. They've set up the model rule where it's 15 PDHs, 30 PDHs, or 45 for a triennial. The only word they're changing is an or in accrediting organization. So it's really not a big change from what we're doing. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to write down the ones that you want to discuss more, and I can review them a little bit more in depth before our meeting, and then we can discuss before we vote on the motion. And I will say, just as a thing in the lawyer profession, legal profession, an or an or can sometimes make all the difference. I know we're just going through these quickly right now, but
no, agree. And I actually had 2 or 3 of them here about legal, so to ask you about those. So I appreciate you asking that, because some of these are, again, the language they're changing is clarifying language, and we're not really changing the substance of the motion. So for us to get up and oppose it based on the clarification is kind of disingenuous. But number 35 sucks, and it always has, and we know it does. So it's got too many pieces to it. Got one person that always leads the charge on that one. Number, EPP motion 1. That's again, I don't know that I saw anything in here that caused me heartburn, but you had an NBA member on there, which was fine from our standpoint. EPE motion 1. I thought was okay. It just says the committee shall have authority to recommend in conjunction with the chair and in conjunction with work the appointees and consultants. So you can have a consultant of some sort on here, which may be good to reach out to somebody outside of what you're doing. As motion 1, Again, it's a survey motion. Wasn't real worried about it. Finance motion 1, which is to move all the budget approval stuff to the end of the agenda, as well as finance motion 2, I think is a pretty good idea. I mean, that falls in line more with how most business things are done. State government, they approve the budget at the very last part, so I thought that was fine. Membership fees, finance 3, doesn't change anything for us. I think they just changed a couple of effective dates, and they went 200 to 201 to make sure that there's no overlap there. Law enforcement motion 1, which is, again, they take out the word formal hearing and just put in hearing procedures, and take out informal and put in settlements, which to me, taking those 2 words out probably leaves you a little bit more latitude to where you're not having to have everything. And I thought that was probably okay. Committee on Board Administrators. And again, this is the makeup of board administrators. I didn't see any. The board of directors said something. Board of directors feels that specificity.
The president elects ability to appoint the people that he wants.
Which kind of goes back to the original point, and I think that's kind of goofy. If you're going to have a committee on board member administrators, I think you should have a member of board member administrator on there. Straightforward to me, but whatever. UPLG motion 1, professional competency.
So you think, with that member board administrator, you think we ought to endorse it?
We're fine with that. Yeah, I think we're good with that, Ricky.
Okay.
Because I think it goes part and parcel with the whole thing. I don't. UPLG motion 1, to be honest with you, I didn't really read it. Had too many words. Hours of class, and they call it contact hours, approved or accredited. I think all those things that they've changed are probably more applicable to what we're talking today and what has been considered. But anyway.
I'll just mark it need to look at.
Experience says, and this is funny because we just kind of talked about this, but teaching experience must be in engineering or engineering related courses at a junior, senior, or graduate level in college or university offering an engineering program of 4 years or more. And the other thing said advanced. So I think that does help kind of say that that's a good thing. To me, that was fine. And the other stuff in there was fine. This is okay too. UPGO motion 3. It just says the bracketed and italicized language throughout the model laws and rules indicates areas where language may need to be customized for a jurisdiction, and to me I think that's fine. UPGO motion 4. And I have discussed, and why did I have discussed?
Is that why you had me send? Is that what you were looking for?
I don't know. I don't think so. And maybe the only thing I said is maybe it just needs to say, maybe this was a definition thing, where a licensee, is there a definition of licensee somewhere that says a licensee is known to be somebody that a state board license? A couple things in here from definitions.
Say again?
Okay, so a licensee, but it doesn't say a licensee of a state board. It says a licensee.
Oh.
And I don't know if there's any difference. You typically start out with a set of definitions that says anytime we use the word licensee, it means somebody who a state board has vetted, blah, 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 whatever. But in this case, I don't know if I just don't know. So Liz, this may be one of those that and I may be way overstating this because but it just seems to be kind of, they use the word licensee, and there's no specific thing to that. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I'd have to look at it in context to all of the other model laws. They might have done it as a cleanup. I just from experience, I recently did something similar with the accountancy rules, or we had listed out several different terms that meant one thing, and we added it to the definitions section and then changed it throughout. So it could possibly be something like that. But I think your concern is valid, and I wrote it down so that I can do a little more research and look at it in context with the other rules, because it might make sense then. But if not, then it would be a good concern to bring up at the meeting.
The rationale says it's just housekeeping.
And it may very well
And
be.
it could be,
yeah.
but we can do our due diligence and check on that.
Model law, UPLG motion 5 definitions, and they just took out licensee. Licenses granted in active status are exempt from continuing, which I think that's because again, it's in the part of it, and it's in the model law. It's what our law says. It's really more important, and I think we probably have something in there I think we do, and it says if you're going to get reactivated, then you have to finish, update your continuing education. So it probably falls in line with what we have.
And it says here it's being eliminated here because it's stated elsewhere under the. And I like not having things in more than one place.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
That's a good thing.
The next one seems to be fine too. It just says each public member of the board shall be a citizen of the United States and a resident of the jurisdiction and shall not have been a licensee. So I think that's probably a good thing. Is the intent of the public member is to make sure it's somebody that gives a fresh outside look to the board. And if you end up with a bunch of licensee or former licensees, then it's kind of an inbred thing that I don't think works very well. So, again, the next one's about surveyors. Unless Tim Lingerfeld cares, I don't care. Shall include the names. The next one's UPLJ motion 8, contact information of the references. Again, that's fine. There is one question on here, and I think it was repeated somewhere else, but it may just be because it's model law and not ours. In our model law, I don't think we have a restriction against references from active board members. Evidently, the model law has a restriction. It says contact information of the references, and it used to say none of whom shall be members of the board. I don't think we have that restriction, so it may not be a big deal one way or the other to us. And again, it's model law. We don't have to have it in here, but I don't think we have that restriction. Not that I know of, because, I've done it. You have. I think.
If it's not, y'all need to tell me.
Well, so I'll just.
Yeah. Do you know, Liz?
I don't believe so. I know we have in our statute about being able to be proficient in English. Language of the trade, but
I've never seen anything that said we can't be a reference for an applicant.
Oh no. Oh, sorry. I thought we were still on board qualifications. I'm so sorry.
Is there a restriction against a reference being a member of this board?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
It says you can't be a relative. There's some
things.
I mean, we have our general, bias restrictions and things like that. But if you were somebody's supervisor, I don't think we can prevent you from giving them a reasonable and qualified reference.
You recuse yourself if that's.
I always thought kind of that you would want, because that's a good thing. Twice. Okay, so we're
on page 32. I'm trying to get through this quickly here. Motion 9, again, I didn't see a licensee shall contain the following: jurisdiction of license, license name, license number, the words professional engineer and or professional surveyor. It should be affixed to each certificate of license, certificate of authorization, and enrollment document. That's typically what our seal's got on it. So, I thought that's what we had to have on it. So, and evidently in some places, I'll wait for later. I've got to load up. Let's see here. UPOGL 10, Liz, I've got legal on this, and I think it's because it's about, yeah, and it's got annual the renewal fees, reinstatement of expired, yeah, and this one's one because it is about reinstatement that I think we need to see. I mean, and it's a model law, so.
It's interesting, these last two, when you look at the rationale, they're moving authoritative language from rules to the law.
Not binding, but makes it a little bit more. And then again, the next one's about hearings. Leah's motion 11, which is well, I wanted you to read it. It was really, really long. Wow. I'm just kidding, but I did get some reading glasses this week, so I feel much better about that. But again, it's the same thing. It's being moved to reorganize and eliminate redundancy. But anytime it's about hearings or disciplinary procedures, I'd feel much better if you read it. Something that's, when I scanned it, it didn't seem goofy, but anyway. Motion 12, kind of the same thing, and it says it should be the duty of designated enforcement authority of this jurisdiction. I mean, that's fine, and that's okay, but again, just wanted to make sure that's kind of how we fit into what we were doing. Number 13 says, I think that's probably fine. I don't think that makes any difference. Which it is probably redundant. 14, and this again looks to be more just cleanup. Instead of advertising in publication, advertisements published in print, electronic media or not, it just talks about where you can call yourself an engineer. And I didn't see anything in here that told me, oh, heck, and we just talked about RFPs, if this is the one. Yeah, responses regarding requests for proposals. There's written disclosure that the engineer, surveying firm are not currently licensed. That one actually may run into our rule on that one because I think we've said you can't do it, period. We don't give a, if you let us know. I think we've just basically said you can't, which is again okay. This is a model law thing, but
we should know.
Yeah, I mean it's different. It's different. So again, I don't think it's think it's fine, but anyway. 15. Yeah. Okay, I mean we've got our own set of stuff, so that's fine. References, license. Have to go by, but it just yeah. Let's see. This may be as far as I got. No, I got.
Our Attorney General told us that we could not do that. We could not create a rule that said that our references would be confidential because of the Open Record Act. They said that if it was added to our statute as an exemption, then we could add it to our rule. But since it's currently not in our statute, we can't add it as a rule at this time. Yeah, no problem.
again, this one is in the opposite.
Yes, and I remember at the regional meeting when I was in the attorney roundtable, a lot of other states told me that they have confidentiality for their references. And when I explained what happened with our rulemaking process and the feedback that we got from the Attorney General in the approval process, and that portion of our rules was denied, most of them couldn't believe it. So it is something we could try again. Of course, they advised us to make it a statutory change first and then rule, but that's where we're at right now.
I think right now it's not. I don't know that it's a problem, but it just seems like it could keep you from getting. We probably.
So, I mean, I think we could discuss at maybe a later committee meeting if you wanted, or tomorrow, ways to. So the documents are public record. If somebody were to request them, they could see who the reference was. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to say during the meeting who the reference was when you're reviewing it. So in a sense, it's not necessarily that everybody has access to that person's name. If you're concerned over you all seeing the reference's name, that might be a different discussion.
I need to see the reference.
Okay. So you're concerned about the public finding out who the reference was.
We want to get the best, truest comments we can from these references, and some of them would not want to do that.
Okay.
They would not want the applicant to know.
I can tell you in the 2 years that I've been here, I think we've only had maybe one request for an applicant's documentation that they submitted to the board.
Okay.
So it's not a common thing that you're having people request these documents to see who the reference was by.
It would probably be more of we don't know whether it not being confidential is affecting the information we're getting on the forms.
I see.
That's
So
what
more
we
of an
don't know.
assurance to the person that is the reference that their words are going to be kept confidential. Right. And right now we can't guarantee that. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
But it's interesting that you got that reaction at the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
That other people do have confidentiality.
Yeah, and we had, some of the states, their attorneys come from the Attorney General's office and they work with the boards instead of the structure that we have where I'm in-house in this department. And their Attorney General attorneys disagreed with, our state's interpretation. But it's state by state. This is just the information we've been given now. Of course, I didn't get the information from them at the time whether or not it was included in their statute. It might be their Public Record Act could be completely different from Tennessee's. So many factors to consider. But I don't think that change is completely out. We just might need to approach it a different way. Maybe reach out to the societies before the next legislative session or something like that.
I mean, I think, like Ricky said, sometimes you wonder when you see somebody say average, if they may be worried that the applicant is able to look at it and they would say below average or something. You just don't get, and again, I get it. You ask people that you think are going to give you positive references to give you a reference, but you still wonder.
I'm always shocked when we get negative references specifically for that reason. I feel like the overwhelming tendency would be that if someone put a piece of paper in front of you and said, "Hey, will you sign this so I can get licensed?" I think that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the individual if knowing that it could be divulged.
I'm wondering if we could change the process, perhaps, as far as if they're concerned about what the applicant is, if they're like hovering over them while they're filling out this approval
and they're not
sheet.
supposed to. No, that process is not. No, they send it. You send it in a sealed envelope later. Yeah. That's not the thing. But if it's open record after the fact and their application gets turned down, and we say it's because of a negative reference, which we may say that. We've said that from time to time.
They don't even send it.
Yeah, well, but they may have an open records
They could
request and come and
request-
pull everything
yeah,
up
they
and
could.
say, "Oh, it's Robert Campbell gave me a negative reference." So,
I see what
Or
you're saying.
it's my boss, I'm going to get even with him.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you have enough justifications to seek that legislative change, and I think that is something the board could continue to pursue.
They're similar in other professions. The references that are needed are in the state of Tennessee, are they all not confidential?
No, I only have my limited experience with the boards that I work on, and my experience getting licensed as an attorney. And I'm pretty sure the references I had to have submitted to take the bar exam, they had to submit it straight through a portal that went, I never saw them. Some of them sent me a copy because they were good recommendations, and they said, hey, just letting you know, this is what I submitted for you on your behalf, which was great. But they had to submit it through like a secure portal, and I wouldn't have access to it otherwise. It went straight to the Bar Association. I'm pretty sure accountancy statute, the references are not confidential for them. Roxana, do you know of any for your boards?
I don't know that they are for the BPR either. It's just you didn't get to see them.
I
If
didn't
you'd
get to see
asked
them.
for them, you would have seen them.
Perhaps. I can't speak to that right now, but
It might be similar to us where an applicant wouldn't really see them unless they ask.
So
And they could.
for my own edification, what would be the process by which there would be a legislative change? Obviously, the board doesn't have a legislative agenda. So who does that?
there's a couple of different options for legislative change. The board can submit changes that they would like proposed through the department, but the administration and our general counsel, that basically our department's leadership, has to decide whether or not we would move something forward in the legislative process. Each board has a time in which they can submit their ideas for that, and then usually they do take a few from all of the boards and move it forward on the governor's package, I believe, and those changes get discussed at the legislative level as to whether or not they're going to amend the statute. With other changes that might not be as significant, or depending on the political climate of the year, other boards have sought out assistance with the professional societies and said, hey, this is an idea we've discussed that we might think it might be a good amendment to our statute. Would you want to carry this change? And so sometimes the professional societies will take the idea and run with it from there, and they present the bill to the legislature, and then it would get amended. So there's a couple different options.
In 4 months, 5 months, that whole process may change dramatically to where that opens up to where they've really done, this administration's focus has been on limiting the number of bills and the number of that come out. Next administration may have a totally opposite view of that. So there may be opportunity from boards to submit stuff and not get windowed down as much. I think now is not a great time to do it because of the
I just wanted to know the
shift.
process.
But I think the next year maybe we can get a better feel for how they're going to operate.
And
going
I
through.
understand where you're coming from. And just as an example of and for your background information, the accountancy board had a statutory change with one of their the age that somebody was considered a retired status, and they offered it to go under the department package, and it didn't get chosen. And the professional society, the Tennessee Society of CPAs, I believe, picked it up, ran with the bill, and that amendment did get approved at the legislature and is now changed in their law. So it is possible to do the
Different
amendments.
avenues are
Yeah,
possible.
even if it doesn't
Okay.
get picked up by our department. But it's okay for the board to discuss it and propose the ideas that you'd like to change.
Sorry for all that. I just
You're fine.
appreciate
Oh,
the,
I mean, it's
appreciate the
helpful for you to
education.
understand the process. Yeah.
Motion 17, again, I think it's just some different language that's, it says individuals instead of these, and it's talking about entering your final year of college rather than calling a college senior, which we know today that's a little bit more fluid. You can be a senior and still be in school for 3 more years, I think, the way it works. I think all these look fine to me. 18, did I even look at that one? I'm sure.
Streamlining. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's about applications. 19 looks fine. 20. Okay, 20 I was freaked out about until I saw at the bottom on page 47. It said for member boards that license structural engineers. And if you look, the next probably half a dozen pages are all about those boards that license structural engineers. And since we don't license structural engineers, my recommendation is for us not to get too bent out of shape about it. Number 21, which is on page 53, experience may be gained in engineering research by industry or government employees. I don't know that I think that's probably a good thing and may go along with kind of what we were talking about a little bit today on one of the applicants. The thing well, it all comes back to how well the applicant states what they did. In a lot of cases, you can be splitting atoms, and the way you write it makes it seem like you're going to the grocery store. So, I mean, you gotta really, whatever. And English still needs to be used. And when I say that, I mean, English is in the context of correct grammar and explanation of what you're doing, not just some halfway put together writing that makes no sense to anybody. Okay, so that's fine. It's kind of the same. Bylaws motion 1. So this proposed response to the approved motion stating that the positions of president-elect and zone president shall be held by a licensed engineer and surveyor, then any member of the council may be elected to the position of treasurer. The language presented matches the language proposed by ACCA, and I think we approved that last year. And it says to be eligible for the office of vice president, a person should be a licensed engineer or surveyor and shall be from the zone that elects him or her, which to me makes sense. And I think that's what we approved last year. Eligible for a treasurer, a person should be a licensed professional engineer, licensed professional surveyor, or public member. So there was a restriction on vice president and president. I think we approved that all in the meeting. Terms of office. And I think this was all again discussed last year, which kind of just fixing that from what was approved. Same thing on motion 3, I believe. Let's see here. Technology Task Force. This is another one that, and again, it says, licensee shall not affix their signature or seals to any, and it says plans or documents. And when they've just made that documents, and again, I'm not sure if documents is defined anywhere. It seems like
In our rule.
Is it in our rule?
Look, they're doing it in that one there.
Okay. So it's okay. Engineering specifications report. Okay, well that would be
They've
fine.
incorporated that.
That's their rule, but the question is documents defined in our law?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Of course, this is, but
No, it's only model.
still, well, no,
But to
this
maintain-
is technology task force. This is actually they're going and documents. This is probably opening us up for where a document may actually be a
It's a BIM model.
BIM model. Well, BIM's next.
Yeah,
but
well-
it could be.
But the technology task force is asking, the whole motion is asking UPLG to adopt this.
Yes,
So that's
we're moving in that direction.
right. And I think that's a great idea.
So I just want to.
I don't know that I agree with all the definitions. I'm just saying that defining it, I think, is a really good idea.
And I think we probably ought to look at what ours says in relation to model law at some point in time when we get into the electronics a little bit more. I think all this for us doesn't make a whole lot of difference right now. Especially on the seals. I think the seal, since we changed that, and thank you, we got approved last week, right? Yeah.
Yes, it was filed with the Secretary of State.
I saw the little email and all that stuff last week.
Yes, we sent an electronic notify to all registered with our electronic notify system licensees to let them know that the seals rule was filed with the Secretary of State, and if they had any questions or concerns between that 90-day period, to let us know. Otherwise, it would become effective.
This is interesting because instead of describing what a document is every time, they define documents as all those things, and then they just use the word document throughout. And I don't know if we'd ever have a chance to clean up like that, but we have it. We have a little bit we've cleaned up, but we stated in a couple of places.
I think that may be something on a to-do list, not today, but where we do define all those documents, because that does come up. Do you have to have a seal on a report? Do you have to cover this? What is this? Does this mean this? And had that more defined as what a document is. That, and it's going to add when we start going more electronic to the confusion. Maybe. And again, all this other stuff, unique to the individual using it, the link, such a digital seal. I think we've got most all that in there. And then again, we've got is the digital signature used process approved by the board, which that doesn't change. So, suggested guidelines for BIM. Yeah, I reckon. I mean, this is a new thing, so we probably ought to read it. But the people that wrote that are smarter than me, and I understand BIM a little bit, but not a whole lot. And the next one's fine too. I think there was only one more, and it was about are we combining zone meetings with the annual meeting? Is that the motion that got approved? Which one is that?
I think they did it on one.
In one
They were
year,
going to
right?
see if they liked it. And so it cut down
So
on all
that's
the
done.
travel and whatnot.
Which is good. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that one, but there was continuity guidelines. That was the other one that was in there. It's called zone meeting requirements, and I didn't print this out. Says zone meetings, meeting attendance the following individuals may attend, and it just lists a bunch of different. That was a big deal, but evidently to somebody it was a big. All the people that can come to a zone meeting, which tickles. Most zone award recipients, wouldn't you think if they're getting an award, they would be there? All right, that's it. Sorry. I hope it didn't take too long.
Thank you.
Thank you
For going through that. That was great.
But if you can
Very
give us
helpful.
also, Liz, just a few before because we go out, Tuesday next week?
Yes.
So even if it's on email or.
Wednesday, yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, that sounds right.
And we can kind of get together.
Robert, can I get you on the
Oh, I'm
record?
sorry.
You're fine.
Sorry. Pretty much everything here seems to be okay. I do think we need to discuss that in zone meetings about ratifying committees and anything else that you see in here, Liz, that looks kind of goofy, but a lot of it's model law stuff that will not impact us unless we nationalize the license.
What was the schedule thing that you said about Wednesday afternoon?
The sessions themselves, I think the big ones start breaking out on
Until
Wednesday.
I think
We've got
there's some.
something to Wednesday morning, because I know I think most of us are traveling on Tuesdays.
There's a meeting. Yeah, there's some continuing education, I think, on Tuesday. And then there's something, I think you're right, the forums, I think, start Wednesday midday or something. I've got the schedule down here somewhere, I'll tell you.
Well, I'm sorry. I won't be there till Thursday morning, but I am on the 5 o'clock flight. Be there as soon as I can.
5 o'clock.
You didn't mention the very last one, talking about reducing the fundamental exam fee.
Oh, I didn't see that.
The Northeast Zone proposed. Board of Directors has no position.
I think we're in favor of it. I've read it as part of the one before it.
I think heartily endorse would be a good way to. For all the conversation we've had about that in the past. So that's good. Thank you, Steve. Good catch. Yeah, I'll be getting there probably sometime Wednesday, midday. Afternoon was seminars, and I think they start Thursday. But Roberts.
Tuesday, there's a board of directors meeting. Wednesday is, wait a minute, that may not be. Today is the, some tours, some whatever. Wednesday's continuing education. The engineering forum starts at 8 o'clock on Thursday. I think all the forums are then. Have our first business meeting that afternoon, then the zone meetings after that. And Friday's another one.
Something Saturday regarding enforcement or something along those lines. Saturday morning. Yep.
Roxana, I've talked to you about this, was asked to be on the nominating committee by the Southern Zone,
Yeah.
I guess VP, Chris Knotts. Does that need approval for me
I think
to
as
do
we
that?
discussed it, are you just, they have asked you, but you're not really representing the full board, right?
This may be a legal question, but I don't think I am representing the board because I'm not going to have a chance to come back to the board and say, so what do you think? I think when I'm in on these I don't think I'm representing the board, but okay.
I volunteered to be on a committee.
Um,
I was on a committee earlier a couple of years ago, and it's purely the individual because I asked that question.
Our accountancy chair and some of our accountancy board members are on the NASPA committees, national committees, so I think you're fine.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else, whether it's on the NCES meeting or another agenda item that we need to cover?
I have a question on something that fortunately Wanda remembered. At some point in the last 2, 3, 4 months, I think we sent back a few of the model law applicants because they don't have a past supervisor on the reference sheet. So when they mark if it's a colleague or their partner and associate owner in the company, if they are not giving us a past supervisor as a reference, listen, I sat down, and of course the requirement is that it be there. So I've not been approving them, where normally you review the model laws after I've signed off with all the documents, so you don't have to see all of that. So on these, I've been putting it off. Is it something that you're comfortable with me starting to approve, or do you still always want those coming to you for review? Because the 2 or 3 that we've sent back, you all have approved, but that particular past precedent reference wasn't on the list. They might have been owners of a company. They might have been, partners or.
No, I'm looking at the language, and there may be something else in there, but just what I've tagged when it talks about that, it says a maximum of 3 references shall be obtained from an employer listed by the applicant. The board prefers references from both the applicant's current employer supervisor and a past employer supervisor if available. So the way it says prefers and if available tells me that's not an absolute, rejection. So if there's not anything available, I mean, I'm going to approve it if it comes through. Yeah.
Are you all comfortable with me starting to do that? What we do when we don't see it, and Cindy's been the one doing this, is we ask, you're missing past supervisor, or it looks like we don't have this, and the answer is usually,
I think I'm comfortable if there's a reason.
okay.
I agree.
We ask for the
If
reason.
there's not
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, if there's not a reason, I'm not so comfortable
Good.
with it.
Okay.
I agree. That's a good thing. If you ask for it and they say, I've been doing this for 50 years and everybody is retired.
I'm my supervisor.
Yeah, I am the supervisor. Right? I think that's certainly a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
Committee do a vote that you'll allow Roxana to approve if they have a reason why it's not available. Then
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second, with a one caveat on discussion, if you have questions about those,
Oh, absolutely.
then we're certainly here to be able to see if it passes the sniff test.
We would want to help with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, any more discussion? All right, Wanda, you want to do a roll call?
Kathy Ware,
Yes.
Stephen King,
Yes.
Robert Campbell,
Yes.
Ricky Burnside,
Yes.
Alton Hescoat.
Yes, ma'am.
God, Alan's hanging in there. God.
I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, he's getting all kind of brownie points here.
Thank you.
Hey, Ricky, I do have one other issue. I don't know where we are on the agenda, but I do have the one issue that I'd like to bring up to the board that came up last week that I want to make everybody aware of. Whenever it's the right time, when it's the appropriate time to do that.
We're getting ready to dismiss, so right now would be the right time.
Yeah, this is good. This is good.
Let me make this kind of quick. I was asked by the National Stormwater Committee, a National Stormwater Committee member, and the Stormwater Agency of Tennessee or something like that. I don't remember what all their titles or monikers were, but to come to a meeting downtown Nashville in Nashville Water Services office. There were 2 major cities in Middle Tennessee represented. One of them right now has 740 active subdivisions going on in their jurisdiction, and one of them has nearly 8 going on in their jurisdiction. So they're very active. Both of them had significant concerns and complaints about the quality of engineering design for stormwater detention, erosion siltation control, planning and processing. And they wanted to show me a bunch of plans, and they did, and they had videos and drone footage and other things for documentation. And I finally said, look, guys, wait a minute. Okay, I understand now why you wanted me here and what your issues are. Seems to me, what they finally said, you're on the licensing board, right? I said, well, yes, but I really need to tell you, I'm not here in that official capacity. However, I will tell you, my interpretation of what you're asking is that you want the licensing board to give you a letter saying this is bad and it needs to have a higher level of jurisdictional control, and that we're going to issue warrants for the arrest of people who perform badly, and we can't do that. That's not what we're about. That if you've got an issue or a complaint, or you've got a concern, or you think there's something going on that affects the public health, safety, and welfare, then you need to file a complaint with the board. And at that point, we can take appropriate review and potentially action. And they said, well, we can't really do that because we fear for our jobs. Yes, do we think this affects the public health and safety and the environmental health and safety? It certainly does. We've had incidents of flooding and people's homes and properties damaged, pets drowning, and other things because of some of this construction going on and not having the appropriate erosion siltation control and stormwater detention in place. And one of the examples that they gave me was one of the developers, when this jurisdiction gave him a cease and desist order, went to the mayor, who the guy goes to church with, and I think is his brother-in-law, and the mayor threatened to fire this particular official. And what to me, I said, look, the only way we can take any action as a board is if there really is a complaint filed. And I wondered if there was some opportunity that we could grant them anonymity or confidentiality in a complaint that they would file. Some of these firms are big firms. They're all firms that we know and work with, and they're good engineers. But just based on what I saw, I would tend to agree that there's one or two things happening. One is either they're not really paying enough attention to the erosion siltation control design, or two, the contractor's not building it the way that the plans indicated, the specs indicated, and the engineer's not allowed by the developer to go out to the job site because he didn't want to pay him any money. So if these jurisdictional entities had the opportunity to file a complaint with anonymity or with confidentiality, then there'd be a lot more complaints filed. Is there some, and I'm asking, I guess, Liz more than anybody else, is there some mechanism we can use to do that?
Well, and I'll add to that, Alton, that my memory is that at least at one time that we allowed or we dealt with people who had complaints who wanted to remain anonymous, that they would bring those to the board and the board would issue the complaint. Is my memory correct on that? Can anybody second that?
I can add something, just kind of for the full picture of a complaint. Now the complaints are processed through a division, if you will, that's centralized, that opens complaints for all 28 regulatory boards we have at the moment. And so where I normally do say, if someone calls, here's what's going on, I'm going to file a complaint, and can it be anonymous? My first answer would be, no, not really. For the complaint to live its course correctly, to have a response, to go to a formal hearing, your full complaint has the information. Having said that, every complaint that comes into our complaint processing division gets opened. And that's the only way we're going to know there's a real problem. If we don't open them because they're anonymous, then we wouldn't know we have this problem. So we're going to open them. But the person may be filling out their information, phone number, address, and so forth, and ask on the complaint, I want to be anonymous. So that's taken into account. But if there's a public records request, that full complaint is opened up and all the information's there. We also do receive some occasions where the complainant fills out not applicable, instead of their name, or John Smith, Jane Doe, it's obviously sort of kind of anonymous. So, it's one of those things. Now, the board office could get information if there's concern, and you can correct me, we can open. If there's concern to protect the public, it's going to get open. We need to open it, one way or the other. I don't think the board can hear it and then the board members be in the middle unless you know something and you want to open a complaint. Again, it's not anonymous. So,
but the complaint then would be entered by me personally as a board member. Does the complaint have to have an author, a named author?
Again, so we don't encourage it to be anonymous, and it could be opened as soon as a public records request is done. But we do open a complaint with the name Jane Doe, and you're not Jane Doe. I'm not, so it's kind of anonymous. It doesn't become the same type of heavy complaint as someone that has all the facts. It doesn't carry all that information. But if you've got pictures, you've got exact information, it's something we need to do to protect the public. It needs to be open.
Okay, so I apologize, Roxanne, for being so dense. Help me understand how some jurisdictional entity fears for their job if they enter a complaint against a developer or a contractor. How could they enter a complaint and remain anonymous?
I caution them because they may not at the end of the day really remain anonymous. If their email's there, if they've typed in their phone number, not meaning to, because it's going to ask them their name, their phone number, where they work, some information about them as the complainant. But if they put in all wrong information about the complainant, then in essence, we don't have their real information, if that makes sense.
Is there another way to deliver that information other than through the website or the portal or whatever that wouldn't require them to enter all that data and information?
So yes, if they send in, let's say, a letter, or if they email myself, they can email me and say, I have all this information, but I'm not opening the complaint. And if it's recent that, listen, I would sit down and say that this has to be open like today, or even if it doesn't, it would be open administratively. We would just need all the information.
Okay, and would the information provider be subject to open public records law, and somebody could find out, hey, you sent me this email, and that's what started this complaint?
Yes, if someone does a public records request on my emails.
But you could send something in anonymously in the old snail mail way.
Absolutely.
That
Yes.
doesn't have any contact information
Correct.
associated.
And that's what I'm saying. We say no anonymous complaints, but they come in
they
all
come
the
in.
time.
Yeah.
And we open them all the time because
And it doesn't carry the full weight of someone who's willing to stand up
You've
and be
got it.
questioned. But
But
as
it's
you
still-
say, because if it represents a threat to the health, safety, and welfare, then the state has an obligation to investigate.
we might run with it because it looks very much like it's, a real concern. And absolutely.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Alton?
Well, kind of. Yeah.
So if they choose to mail it to me and it has no return address, it has an envelope, and I've gotten those, that's exactly how we're going to open it.
Okay. Okay. That's an unusual way of doing that, I guess. But
It is.
But if that's the only mechanism that they can use and remain anonymous, I guess maybe that's the only thing they can do.
Do you not watch American Mob Channel? This is how this is done, Alton.
I don't know. I watch American Mob Channel. Okay, that's good. I'll pass that in. That would be actually helpful for them. Can they just send it directly to you, Roxana?
They can. I would, because it could go round in circles. At least we've had the conversation because either I'm going to have to do it or Wanda's going to have to sit down and enter it on the system, but we are entering it with our name as an administrative complaint.
Okay, very good. I'll pass that information along and help them understand the methodology for doing that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think that's better than you entering it, because then again, if we go to an administrative law judge, if it goes to a hearing, you're in the middle of the whole thing.
Well, and I'm not absolutely certain I mind that. I mean, it's sort of our duty and responsibility as board members anyway. But I'd rather not do that just for the inconvenience factor. But if that's the way it needs to happen, and again, in some way it protects, as Kathy said, the public health, safety, and welfare, then I think we have an obligation to do that.
Yeah. But they're coming to you for guidance, so I think that would be the best guidance. Have them send it directly to me.
I can do that. That's what I'll do. That's how I'll respond.
Hey, Alton, let me ask you a quick question on this. But they've not written notices of violation or anything?
They have, and cease and desist orders and other things, and that the normal reaction to that from either the developer or the contractor is to go to some council member or the mayor or some entity at a higher level than what this review person is, the staff person is, and complain about them.
Right, but then how's a complaint, because that council person or that other person is not a registrant? I mean, that
I can tell you a little bit more about the process. So when we get an email from a state representative, we just explain what our process is to them, and then sometimes we're able to expedite it to getting processed maybe faster than some of the other complaints, but it's still processed the same way that Roxana explained.
I understand that, but what I'm saying, this is somebody, a city councilman, that goes and says, I'm going to get you fired if you don't back off of this development. This is not even a complaint against a registrant. This is not
Well, if it's a criminal, like blackmail type issue, then that would be,
Yeah, that's not the A&E board's.
right, that's not our jurisdiction.
That's what I'm saying. If somebody's getting threatened, and Steve may be able to weigh in on, if you as a public official are getting threatened with your job for doing your job, then that goes against the laws of the municipality that's hired you, because they swore to uphold the laws of that were on the books.
Robert, I agree with you, but you know life's reality there.
Oh, I do. But the only thing I'm saying is the only thing that I see that we have as a board, and I'm not trying to abdicate responsibility, but if in that situation the inspector had gotten something from an engineer that falsely claimed that the site was stabilized, and it was obviously not stabilized, and the engineer signed off saying all was well, then I think we as a board certainly have something. But I just don't know how we could process because typically the inspector's not a registrant. Typically,
These aren't inspectors.
okay.
These are PEs that are reviewing plans that know and understand what is ESTCA or whatever all of the jurisdictional controls and all of the regulatory design requirements for erosion and siltation control, stormwater retention, and storm drainage. They know what those rules and regulations and design criteria are. They're reviewing these plans, and they're significantly deficient.
Yeah, but it's not.
Just
But
like the fire marshal's office does when they enter a complaint. And again, that's
right.
It's exactly the same scenario. The fire marshal's office does it all the time.
Yeah, but it's against but Alton, it's against a registrant. It's not against.
So would this be?
So they're going to file a complaint. A registrant's going to file a complaint against another registrant.
That's correct.
So the city councilman's a registrant, or is
No, the city council's not. No, none of, to my knowledge, none of these council members in either of these two very large jurisdictions are PEs. But either the mayor or some high-ranking official, a city manager says, "Why are you doing this? Why are you picking on these people? Don't you know that all of this new development means revenue for this city, and you're an impediment to that revenue?" And those types of things.
but what?
They're afraid to process these cease and desist orders, or to continue to decline approvals on these submittals because of they fear for their job.
But I'm still not clear. So the PE who is reviewing the stormwater stuff has a complaint on the site. They go to the mayor, who's not a registrant, and the mayor says, "You leave these people alone." When they file a complaint, they're filing it against a non-registrant, which this board.
No, they're filing it against the engineer who prepared the plans for the stormwater and its erosion siltation.
Okay,
control.
so it's a design issue, not
It's a design issue.
It's not a construction issue.
They know the design documents are substandard, correct?
That's certainly legitimate. Okay, I thought we were talking about inspectors.
Another option, seems like years ago, I remember a TSBE chapter having an ethics committee that did some of this.
Yeah, but do they have any sort of jurisdictional? Would that ethics committee then make the complaint?
The ethics committee would file a complaint with the board.
And would that person remain anonymous?
No, but it would be a person. The person filing the complaint wouldn't be the person directly involved.
Yeah, but if they requested information, if the people that were the respondent were requested information under the Public Freedom of Access to Public Information Act, would that person's name be revealed?
Oh, because it's the board. The board's a TSP local chapter, for instance, is not a public entity that doesn't have to reveal what went on in a board meeting.
Yeah,
that's they're their own entity. So if a person came to them, they could very easily say, "We're not going to reveal anything," because they're not a government agency. They're just they're a whatever organization.
That's correct. And also, if there's, like Robert said earlier, we have to stick to what's within our jurisdiction as far as the complaint goes. If there's issues as far as blackmail or fear of like retaliation of someone losing their job, they definitely need to contact an employment law attorney that, outside counsel.
They're not asking for that, Liz, at all. That's the fear, and that's one of the reasons they don't enter the complaint. But that's not what they see substandard design that could potentially and has impacted the public health, safety, and welfare, and the environment's health, safety, and welfare. There's been damage done as a result of some of these plans being allowed to go through, and they are afraid to file a complaint. They want to file a complaint. They recognize the deficiency in design, and they want action to be taken, but they'd like to maintain anonymity when they do that.
Alton, when say this is a city engineer or something that's in this role, and they send this anonymous piece of information through the mail, and the board staff opens a complaint. At some point, they're probably going to get questioned. Did you open this complaint because you're the only one who had access to the plans, or there's probably, they probably still are going to need to potentially think about this employment, what Liz said, and getting some legal help, potentially. I'm just thinking in some cases they're going to get figured out.
That could be. I would think it would be a strong indication about who filed the complaint.
Yeah.
If and when it got filed, but
right.
And I agree.
It's a problem.
They still may, but nobody can prove anything at that point. They can't prove anybody made that submittal. And again, it could have come from a contractor. It could have come from another engineering firm.
That's true.
It could have come from a homeowners association, or it could have come from a resident. And it could have come from a lot of different people.
Okay, well that's good. The point is that there's bad stuff happening and it needs to come to light.
I agree.
Okay. Okay.
So I will let them know. And this organization, I will say they do regular seminars and other things for people that do what these regulatory agencies do, and so hopefully they can spread the word.
Great topic.
Roxanna and Liz, thank you. Thanks for your help and guidance on this.
Our pleasure.
Okay. Any other topics? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That didn't even get a roll call.
This is Alton saying aye.
Thanks, Alton. Thanks for phoning in.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
Interesting.